when it comes to Cory Booker and his record, there are any number of things that we can talk about that will demonstrate just how atrocious his record is. We can talk about his close ties to Wall Street. We can talk about how he was one of 13 senators that voted to stop us from importing cheaper prescription drugs from Canada. He actually did that, and then once he got backlash, he flipped and then pretended it was as if Canada doesn't have stronger regulatory standards than us. Completely disingenuous. So, we could talk about that. We can also talk about how back in 2012, when President Obama was running against Mitt Romney and he was a surrogate for Obama, Cory Booker actually attacked Obama because he thought Obama was being too harsh on private equity firms.
On a very personal level, I'm not about to sit here and indict private equity. To me, it's just this, we're getting to a ridiculous point in America, especially that I know I live in a state where pension funds, unions, and other people are investing in companies like Bain Capital. If you look at the totality of Bain Capital's record, they've done a lot to support businesses, to grow businesses, and this, to me, I'm very uncomfortable. This kind of stuff is nauseating to me on both sides. It's nauseating to the American public. Enough is enough. Stop attacking private equity. Stop attacking Jeremiah Wright. This stuff has got to stop, because what it does is it undermines, to me, what this country should be focused on. It's a distraction from the real issues. It's either going to be a small campaign about this crap, or it's going to be a big campaign, in my opinion, about the issues that American public cares about.
Now, of course, since he attacked Obama, what did the GOP do? Well, they then included Cory Booker's attack on Obama in a pro-Romney television ad, basically saying this surrogate of Barack Obama decided to attack Obama himself. And that was all because Cory Booker wanted to defend private equity firms. He thought Obama's criticism was nauseating to him. So we can talk about that. We can also talk about how Cory Booker just wouldn't be that effective in a battle against Donald Trump head-to-head, because the last time Donald Trump attacked Cory Booker responded not by firing back, but by instead blowing smoke up Donald Trump's ass.
What? I don't want to answer his hate with hate. I'm going to answer it with love. I'm not going to answer his darkness with darkness. I love him. I know his kids. I know his family. They're good. The children especially, good people. And this is the problem he has, is that he wants to, first of all, I feel lucky because he was attacking everybody else in the Senate, from John McCain to Elizabeth Warren. I was feeling left out. Now he's finally got them. Thank you, Donald. I finally feel like I'm important enough that you will attack and
But when you read that and he says, well, what else can that mean? I know Cory Booker better than he knows himself. What is that supposed to mean to you?
But that's what he wants. He wants us to be speculating. Ooh, it sounds so sinister and this.
It does.
I don't care. I love you, Donald.
Now, for all the times that Cory Booker lies and is disingenuous and is a political opportunist, I actually believe him there when he says that he loves Donald Trump, because he actually is friends with the Trump family. He attended Ivanka Trump and Jared Kushner's wedding. Kushner was a supporter of Booker while he was the mayor of Newark, New Jersey. Kushner also hosted a fundraiser for Booker's Senate campaign. So again, there are so many things we can talk about when it comes to Cory Booker, but I'm not going to go through and give you this comprehensive breakdown of Cory Booker's record, because I think that there's one aspect about his record that really needs more attention than any other aspect, because it sheds light on who Cory Booker is and who he chooses to align himself with, and how that is devastating to the poor communities he claims to want to support. So one of the most harmful aspects about Cory Booker's past, to be blunt, as Eric Blank of Jacobin puts it, well, Cory Booker hates public schools. There are many good reasons to oppose Cory Booker's bid for the presidency. One of the main ones is his long-standing drive to destroy public education. So Blank goes on to explain, for close to 2 decades, Cory Booker has been at the forefront of a nationwide push to dismantle public education. According to Booker, the education system is the main cause of our society's fundamental problems, rather than, say, inequality and unchecked corporate power. As he explained in a 2011 speech, disparities in income in America are not because of some greedy capitalist. No, it's because of a failing education system. Public schools, Booker continued, are also responsible for mass incarceration and racial injustice. To combat such evils, Booker has openly praised Republican leader Betsy DeVos's organization, American Federation for Children, for fighting to win the battle of the civil rights movement, scapegoating underfunded public schools for deeply rooted racial and economic problems makes little sense, but it's been a ticket to the top for Cory Booker. In fact, it was by hitching his start to the corporate-backed education reform movement that Booker first rose to prominence. The son of wealthy parents who were among IBM's first black executives, Booker's big political break came in September of 2000 when he was tapped to give a keynote speech to the arch-conservative Manhattan Institute, calling the Newark school system repugnant. Booker claimed there was great evidence that large groups of children cannot succeed in the public school system. Yet, rather than improving this system by increasing school funding or building public community schools, Booker made a hard case for charter schools as well as school vouchers, i.e. state funding for parents to pay for private schools. To give this pitch a social justice veneer, he quoted Frederick Douglass, quote, "Power concedes nothing without force," and steeped his arguments in the language of racial justice. Now, I'm not doubting that Cory Booker cares about social and racial justice. I think he probably cares deeply about these issues. However, to exploit racial justice causes to push for an insidious and, quite frankly, nefarious pro-charter school agenda, that, to me, is something that is morally indefensible. Now, however you want to repackage that, it doesn't matter, because his actions speak for themselves. Now, as Blank continues, one of Booker's main financial backers, Whitney Tilson, was honest about the profit motivations for large hedge fund investors like himself. Charter schools, he explained to the New York Times, are the ideal philanthropic opportunity for such business leaders because hedge funds are always looking for ways to turn a small amount of capital into a large amount of capital. While the over $3 million in campaign contributions Booker received from his school reform sponsors was not quite enough to buy him the 2002 election, Booker's 2006 mayoral bid was victorious. Due in large part to his zealous commitment to privatization, Newark has gone from having less than 10% of students in charters in 2008 to over 33% today. By 2022, 44% of the city's students are set to be schooled in these publicly financed but privately run institutions. To quote, "Make Newark the charter school capital of the nation," Booker in 2010 reached out to Republican Governor Chris Christie and billionaire Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg. Christie agreed to cede Booker an exceptional degree of mayoral control over education. Zuckerberg then gave Booker a whopping $100 million for the project. In Booker's view, the plan would have to be pushed from the top down, since the process could be influenced by forces like teachers' unions, for whom the extension of charter schools represent a mortal threat. Quote, "Real change has casualties, and those who prospered under the pre-existing order will fight loudly and viciously," explained Booker in his memo to the governor. Despite long-standing myths about the private sector's efficiency, much of Zuckerberg's money was squandered in $1,000-a-day consultants and other ill-thought-out initiatives. And despite this massive private sector cash inflow, Booker's reforms have done nothing to actually improve public education in Newark schools, even if one judges school quality through the dubious criteria of test scores. But these reforms did succeed in rolling back teacher union power, shrinking the public sector, and undercutting democratic control over education. Now, to basically put things simply, Education Secretary Betsy DeVos, who basically bought her position in Trump's administration, has spent tons of her money, millions of dollars, and her family pushing for the privatization of education. Now, how do you promote privatized schooling? Well, first, you have to make the case for it by arguing that public schools, they just aren't sufficient in today's day and age. The standards are much lower. So because they're so bad, well, you should enroll your child in a private charter school. But how do they influence you to enroll your children in a charter school that you may not be able to afford? Well, they lead this cause to destroy public education. And Cory Booker was one of the allies of the DeVos family trying to accomplish this. And this is true when you look at his record as the mayor of Newark, because he wasn't just vehemently pro-charter schools, because that's one thing. But the problem with being pro-charter school is you almost always are simultaneously going to be anti-public school. And as the mayor of Newark, Cory Booker was vehemently anti-public school. So one of the main objectives he had was to close down public schools that were underperforming. Now, if you care about the quality of education, you might want to first assess why these schools are underperforming. Maybe it's the case that they lack resources. Maybe they're short on staff. Maybe the state isn't doing enough to assist these schools. But he simply just wanted to close them down because less public schools means that parents will have less options and will thus be more inclined to enroll their children in charter schools. And Cory Booker wasn't interested at all in gauging whether or not these schools' inability to thrive hinged on a lack of funding. Instead, he just wanted to close them down, saying, quote, "I don't think pouring new wine into old skins is the way. We need to close them and start new ones." Now, another initiative that Cory Booker pushed for during his tenure as the mayor of Newark was he tried to push for this initiative that would tie teachers' pay to their performance, and their performance was evaluated by individuals who weren't actually educators themselves. Now, if you know anything about education, then this would be devastating to teachers, because if you're going to gauge a teacher's performance specifically on test scores, you're just going to hurt teachers and in turn hurt students. But in fact, Cory Booker, in his bid to privatize education, he became so brazen that individuals like Ross Baraka, who was a principal in one of the high schools in Newark, he actually sounded the alarm about Cory Booker because it was very clear that Cory Booker was trying to not just push for private schools, but he was just outright trying to dismantle public education. And because Cory Booker was so effective at dismantling public education in Newark, New Jersey, well, hedge fund backers decided to reward him, and they spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to get him elected to the Senate. But since he knows now that this type of behavior isn't going to land well with the Democratic Party's base in 2020, Blank explains, Booker's response has been to tone down his proselytizing for privatization and to reverse his long-standing support for Betsy DeVos, with whom he had served on the Alliance for School Choice Board between 2004 and 2008. But there's little evidence that his fundamental political commitments have changed. Though Booker voted against DeVos's appointment as Secretary of Education, he was quick to explain on CNN that his stance on school reform hadn't changed one iota. So that is disqualifying to me, because if Cory Booker does to the aggregate country on a national level what he did in Newark, New Jersey, with how ferocious he was in attacking public education, that would be devastating. I can't even fathom how horrible that will be. Now, he may tell you he's not going to push for that, but I mean, I'll let you decide. His record, I think, speaks for itself. Now, I need you to understand something. Whenever you hear the word school choice, that is a misnomer, because the individuals who are pushing for charter schools, who are talking about, quote, school choice, well, they're actually not really about school choice. They're trying to frame this as a debate about school choice and broadening choice, but in actuality, they want to limit choices because what they're trying to do is destroy public schools. They're lobbying to have these schools have less resources, to destroy public education. Also, that way, you'll feel more inclined to enroll your children in their charter schools. So, this nonsense about school choice, whenever you hear someone talking about that, I need your bullshit detector to go off, because they are full of shit and they're trying to gaslight you. But I mean, Cory Booker, his career, a lot of it is characterized by his willingness to push vociferously for charter schools, much to the detriment of private schools, or public schools, excuse me. So public education is incredibly important, and what we need to do is empower teachers. We need to push for more funding in public education. But when you have someone like Cory Booker running for president, I'm sure teachers are terrified. Now, during his press conference, he actually was asked about this, and he said, look, I unequivocally support the teachers in Los Angeles as they strike.
Well, first and foremost, our teachers are ridiculously underpaid in America. If you just want to look at this in an economic analysis, they are the profession that contributes the most to a thriving American economy. And we cannot continue to devalue what is one of the greatest professions in our country, which is public school teachers. Hermana! Hola, ¿cómo está? A la Victoria!
it may sound wonderful, but on paper, functionally speaking, Cory Booker is a Republican when it comes to public education. Because you don't get to just go through your whole career trying to destroy public education at the behest of these for-profit charter schools, and then just pretend as if you never did that, pretend as if your agenda didn't lead to nearly half of Newark schools being charter schools. That's something that can't just be swept under the rug. But my guess is he's going to try to pretend as if none of that happened, but it's not going to go away. Now, one thing that the author of this article makes clear is that we should all actually be thankful about Cory Booker's presence here, because at least at a minimum, he's going to start this conversation about just how harmful charter schools are to public education. And that's something that the Democratic Party needs to address, because Cory Booker has been trying to push the party to be more friendly towards charter schools. And there's enough corporate Democrats to where I'm sure he's been relatively successful. But as president, you have to answer for all of these things you did to destroy public education in your city when you were the mayor. Closing down public schools that were underperforming. That is something that is terrifying to think of what he can do on a national level in terms of damage. So if you need to know anything about Cory Booker, this is what you need to know about Cory Booker, that he is anti-public education. And he may not say that, he may not admit this explicitly, but functionally speaking, throughout his career, he has done things that harm public education.
You could support the Humanist Report at patreon.com/Humanist Report. But trust me, I'd have way more supporters on Patreon if that was my podcast. Sad.